rather on behalf of the chair, Sanjay Nayak, I would say that this presentation we shall begin with without any lapse of time, so that we give some kind of time for discussions as well. So let me invite Saminda Hettiachi to speak on diaspora as a knowledge community in policy making for nation building of post-war Sri Lanka. Please.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm as you can see, I'm from Sri Lanka. I work as a lecturer as well as the researcher. But in addition to that, I have been involved with diaspora work as a part of my interest. So this presentation is partly on research, but also what I want to do and what I have been doing. So I have been coming to India maybe more than 10 years, but this is my first time to this university. It's really impressive, nice building and all the facilities, very hospitable people. But I was a little bit annoyed when I came here because this facility is opened by Rajiv Gandhi, and we are the people who killed Rajiv Gandhi. So that's actually one diaspora connection. So, but today I'm going to talk about the positive part of that, that is how to get their country knowledge in nation building in Sri Lanka. So the important thing is we actually Sri Lankan maybe mood change from peace building or from rather negative role of diaspora to positive role. So we are in that kind of transition. Am I clear enough? You have a southern accent, right? Okay. Okay. So Sri Lanka is a 20 million population, 20 million, and we have actually about 2 million approximately. Switch off?
No. Continue.
Right. It's like 10% of Sri Lankan population is living abroad, so it's a high proportion of the percentage-wise very high. And most of them actually are temporary workers in the Middle East, mostly housemaids and other unskilled labor force in that region. But also because of war, a lot of people may be forcefully thrown out of the country as a part of the war. They flew the country and they are now mainly refugees or asylum seekers in the Western countries as well as, of course, in India. So my main focus will be part of those people. And the Sri Lankan diaspora are actually very active socially, politically, economically in their own host countries as well as in Sri Lanka. So that is why we talk about this as a major issue in nation building in Sri Lanka. Okay, if you look at the figures, we have traditional, unskilled labor in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and in other Middle Eastern countries. But if you notice, the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Switzerland, they also have a high percentage of people living. Now I was looking at the morning session. I think there are more Sri Lankans in France than Indians. So, this is a very different orientation, but that's the representation. Now, I don't know, do you know these guys? This is Michael Onda. He's a Sri Lankan diaspora living in Canada. He's the author of English Patient. And now she's a young rapper, right?
British.
Yeah, and she's very nowadays she's like a celebrity among Sri Lankan diaspora, especially among pro-Tamil, pro-NTT lobby. So she's like the spokesperson among young people. Just to get idea about different profile of diaspora members. Okay, so I will look at in my presentation I talk about rather influences and abilities in nation building Sri Lanka, and also how to get their contribution back in developing the country, as well as the base of engaging them in that kind of process. My work is actually limited in mostly northern, Western Europe, and also we look at Canada and North America in terms of online research. So I have been working in these countries, especially continental European countries. And when I say knowledge communities, mainly their online involvement as shared interest and working on different forums for different purposes, but this has also physical element. But we talk about now. That's why the Middle Eastern unskilled employees or the migrants are not part of my work, because we are looking at more about professions or knowledge where people can contribute knowledge back in the nation building. They are significant numbers, and also they are very active online, as well as they have different knowledge domains. Okay, so you may be familiar with Sri Lankan situation. So kind of Sri Lankan government able to defeat militarily Tamil Tigers 2 years ago. Actually now if you look at international context, Sri Lankan government is being criticized for war against, crime against humanity and war crimes. So there's a huge kind of campaign, huge discussion about, especially partly by diaspora, but about accountability. That's one aspect, especially internationally. But if you have been to Sri Lanka recently, you see what's going on there. And internally, there's a big kind of effort on development projects, as well as some effort in reconciliation and power decentralization. So, as a Sri Lankan who is living there, even though I'm from the majority, but I feel like there are a lot of positive changes happening in terms of freedom of movement, people's, the orientation toward economical development. Because 10 years ago we were in a war-torn country and we were always afraid of being hit by a bomb or suicide bomber. So now it's very different orientation. We get a lot of stories coming in, and Sri Lankan stock market is more successful, those kind of hype in terms of local orientation, especially among, actually not among majority but also among Tamil people are more, they feel more free in terms of these efforts. Therefore, now our orientation from, let's say, 5 years to now has changed from survival to kind of growth, or more in terms of building the nation. That is why diaspora can play a major role in this process in terms of their expertise and experience. Okay, so these are some of the areas where they can contribute. For example, a lot of these people are living in democratic countries and they are aware about power decentralization model, maybe federalism, governance, and also different institutional arrangements, because they live in these kind of places. As I told you, Canada, USA, UK, other countries in Europe, and also there can be different technology transfer models, plus different financial. I think we discussed a lot of similar example in Irish case, Scottish case, and also the Indian case. So there are different ways of looking at their contribution. I will not go into details. But however, the situation is not very positive, because first of all, the diaspora is very fragmented. There are division along ethnic lines, political ideologies, maybe to some extent religion. So currently, this is not really positive. There are a lot of fragmentation and divisions. And also a lot of them are not part of the policy making, because they are not considered as part of Sri Lankan nation. And also one major is some of these diaspora groups are working against the country. The state is their enemy, so you see a lot of activism against Sri Lanka by Sri Lankan diaspora. But there are some collaborators also, but they are considered collaborators with the Sri Lankan government as well as other Sri Lankan organizations, but they are seen as anti-diaspora groups. Plus, in Sri Lanka, actually, the concept of diaspora also is not very known. Even, for example, when I start talking about diaspora, I have to explain what is diaspora. They have not even heard of the term. We know about expatriates, Sri Lankan living abroad, but the term diaspora was even new. But now it's getting kind of awareness. So there are a lot of legal and cultural obstacles to discuss about that. Now when I want to come to this conference, I have a problem ask for travel grant because I can't say I'm going to diaspora. Diaspora is like pro-LGBT, so I'm working in nationalism, That's kind of notion in Sri Lanka. So those things are there. And also, as you know, it's very difficult to collaborate and coordinate with people living across the globe. For a country like Sri Lanka, it's costly affair to even there's a willingness to do in terms of starting these kind of projects. But I think my argument is actually that there is a possibility and there are opportunities that we can engage them positively. For example, there are examples or projects of situations where diaspora communities engage in Sri Lankan nation and development, but as private ventures. Now, the best example I can quote is actually post-tsunami reconstruction project. After tsunami, we saw a situation where all these divisions and all these conflicts were kind of at least temporary. There are people, even pro-LDT, pro-government, all the diaspora among other interested communities help. So that's a very key point I want to emphasize here, because we have seen situations where you can collaborate and then do work based on that. Therefore, there is a need and there is a space now for us to develop some kind of strategic, as we say, strategic, long-term oriented policy making with a multi-stakeholder approach. And now I'm not a diaspora researcher, I'm in research on ICT and web technology. So I believe with my expertise and experience, this is actually a very logical space, the web and web technologies, where scattered communities and individuals can collaborate and share knowledge and then do that to the contribution. Maybe how long I have? 5 minutes to do it, 5, 6. Okay, so I have been working, there are different projects, but I want to show you one example of a project where I have been part of. That is actually Sri Lankan Diaspora Professional Association. What we have been trying to do is to gather people from different countries and get their expertise and try to have discussions and forums and then bring back their knowledge and expertise in terms of projects, maybe policy suggestions and discussion to Sri Lankan government and in terms of research and other policy tools. So I have been doing, at least trying to do from at least 2003-04. This is a small example. We started with 2, 3, actually 5 people, but grew up to more than 100 in 20 countries. But in the height of war in 2007, because of the government, the cutting down of activity and all this, we had to scale down our operation. Now we are trying to reorient, because those days the focus was mainly peace building and reconciliation. But now we are talking about more about development. Okay, these are some of events we participated. First one is in Germany, Munich, and this diaspora conference in Hanover. And these are also in. This is one in Stuttgart and other presentation in Italy. And we had a lot of opportunities to meet researchers and policymakers in other countries. This is in New Zealand. And we had some, public lecturers and meetings organized by diaspora. We were invited to talk and had discussion forums. And also there are a lot of Sri Lankan, especially Tamil politicians live out of Sri Lanka because of the fear of LGBT, threat of LGBT, and therefore I had a chance to meet them and talk with them. And also Sri Lankan diaspora in countries like UK, Canada, they have their own functions. Like this is a New Year festival, and this is a conference in London, and this is a kind of pro-LGBT protest campaign in Eiffel Tower, and there's a conference here. And also there are a lot of activities among diaspora communities where my other colleagues take part. And also also we try to also kind of make our case in like official forums in European Union and federalist conferences. So the point is that we have been trying to do some work, maybe not really in a large scale, but the experience is actually there's a very high positive response. The only thing is, you can't make it in the mainstream because there are other issues. Okay. Now my recommendations, now there's a huge role the government can play, like for example, like what the Indian government has done, maybe in a different scale, but the government has a big role at least to get out of fear mentality and make it as a positive force. And as I told you, awareness among Sri Lankan public should be also increased. Diaspora should be recognized as a part of overall nation of Sri Lanka. Now they are like tourists or foreigners, because that should change. And there should be like institution, and I was really impressed with the secretary's argument about all these tools they have. So we should also learn from them, and also best practices in other countries. That's a very important point. I also think that universities and higher education institutions can play the pioneering role in terms of this knowledge exchange. And as Professor Mark mentioned in the morning, this public-private partnership model. And my emphasis here again is about social media, especially all this social media and Web 2.0 technology. So these are real knowledge forums where especially young diaspora members can be addressed and engaged. Okay, so this is, I will not go into details, but the point is that there are opportunities where Sri Lanka as a country who is coming out of this can engage diaspora in a positive way, and with win-win situation for both diaspora as well as for the country. So the new web media is a very effective way of engaging and working with them. So therefore my thinking, I'm trying to do along with that lamp, this is one part of research, but at the same time it's practice. Thank you very much. And unfortunately I have to take flight back at 6 p.m. So this is my contact details, you can be in touch. Do I get a chance to answer one of the questions? Thank you very much.
For sheer want of time, probably you can make very quick remarks or one or two questions. You can have two persons respond to this.
I have a quick question, but I think you have a very important observation that the diaspora has to be recognized as a positive force. So, now, what is the percentage of the Sinhalese and the Tamilis of the two media?
Okay.
That makes a difference. Does it make a difference in that?
Yeah. Now, for example, if you look at the very kind of rough idea. Now, Middle East mainly Sri Lanka Sinhalese, actually maybe 80% Sinhalese, but in continental European countries like Germany, France, Switzerland, they are 90%. Exactly. So overall, maybe I would say 60% Sinhalese all over the world, but now for this purpose, post-migrant or diaspora active in Western countries are mainly 80% are other than UK, Canada, or even Canada is Tamil. So yes, this is the breakthrough we have made, because they are saying that now when in nominal terms diaspora means a threat. That's the understanding. Yeah.
That's unless you change that mindset, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And where your essay will be educated?
Now you mean in terms of work?
Physically,
Yeah, now we are based in Sri Lanka, so we do a lot of work outside Sri Lanka. But in Sri Lanka we don't still promote that, because we want to organize and then wait till things become better and then it's understood.
Yeah. Obviously, thank you. You have a question? Yes. Because today is a very difficult day. You also have to travel. That's why we are sitting this speech.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you said that the Sri Lankan diaspora is very social active, but at the same time the initiatives towards the home country are more personal initiatives, really based in individual impetus. So I would like to ask you, you that are working on the ground with these groups, at the operational level, what could be, what are the opportunities, like bottom-up opportunities, to create some associative or communitary opportunities to gather these diasporas to have a greater impact towards the home country?
Okay, now I think in Southeast maybe compared to India, Sri Lanka is very open for non-government organizations. We have all type of non-government organizations, from human rights, international allies, all the kind of organization you can have there. For example, now one way of entry will be working with non-government organizations. You can have a community-based organization form or working with them. So one way of landing. Now this happened after tsunami, because we invited all type of non-government, you can work. And also now one thing really, the media orientation. Media orientation is still, it's not reflecting reality as many other cases. So people can come, they can start business, because now I'm not very sure about other countries, but Sri Lanka is very liberal in terms of, for example, visiting, investing, all types of ventures. So because it's a small country, depend on tourism. So therefore, entry into, now even all of you can come to Sri Lanka without visa. You get visa on arrival. So therefore, of course there are kind of threats from government. If you are seen as royalty, then they will trouble you. But you can start I don't know, maybe non-government organization, any other community-based organization, work for reconciliation, reconstruction, building, investing. There are diaspora bonds. So ILO is doing a lot of work in Sri Lanka.
Small observation.
Oh yeah, please.
Actually, you have talked about integrating diaspora with Sri Lankan development, okay, and realizing their role for the development of Sri Lanka. But what should be the modalities to engage them? See, for the process of nation building, we have to go through the planning and policy making, and you are telling that they should be included in the policy making as well as decision making process. What are the modalities to accommodate various ideas and to make it the reality?
Yeah, no, that's one problem we have, because in terms of institutions, we don't have serious institutions to accommodate. But at the same time, Sri Lanka has dual nationality policy. So you can work, if you are like a diaspora, you can easily get Sri Lankan nationality, right? And then work on that. Of course, then there should be like a new mechanisms, like the secretary mentioned in the morning, all these diaspora information centers, but also board of investment. There are different forums, but not allocated particularly for diaspora. There's a challenge on government changing that mindset and forming them. That is why I'm interested in looking at Indian example. Yeah. So I'm very sorry I have to go now. Thank you very much. All the best for the other presenters.
We are actually running behind schedule.